The gala dinner was everything my family admired. Luxury, status, power. The ballroom glowed under massive chandeliers, each table decorated with gold-trimmed plates and crystal glasses. Guests moved through the room in designer outfits, laughing, networking, measuring each other without saying a word. Your one click can keep these stories alive. Subscribe, because every voice deserves to be heard. Don't miss out on the journey. Subscribe and let's grow, laugh, and learn together. My father loved places like this. Stand straight, he told my brother as we entered. People notice everything. Then his eyes shifted to me. And try not to look like you don't belong. I almost smiled, because in his world, I never did. I wore a simple black dress. No designer label. No flashy jewelry. Just something clean and understated. To me, it was enough. To him, it was embarrassing. We approached a group of well-dressed guests near the entrance. My father immediately started introductions. Confident voice. Firm handshake. Mentioning my brother's finance job within seconds. And this is my daughter, he added, gesturing toward me. A polite pause. What do you do? One of the men asked. Before I could answer, my brother smirked. She helps out here and there, he said. My father chuckled. Basically support work. A few people nodded politely. Translation, not important. The conversation moved on. Because in rooms like this, if you weren't impressive in the first 10 seconds, you disappeared. Later, as we walked toward our table, my father leaned toward another guest and said quietly, but clearly enough for me to hear, "You see people like her at these events all the time." He nodded in my direction. They blend in with the staff. The man laughed awkwardly. My brother added, "Yeah, she could pass as the help." My father smiled. Exactly. I didn't respond, because explaining things to my family had never changed anything. In their minds, success had to be visible. Expensive clothes, big titles, recognizable status. Anything else didn't count. We reached our table near the center of the ballroom. A good spot, close enough to the stage to be seen. My father looked pleased. This is where the real conversations happen, he said. Dinner began shortly after, course after course. The room filled with conversations about investments, acquisitions, and global expansion. My father joined in eagerly. My brother followed. I listened quietly. Across the room, I noticed something familiar. Several executives from one of my companies were seated near the front. They hadn't seen me yet. That was fine. I preferred it that way. For years, I had stayed out of the spotlight, built everything quietly, structured ownership through holding companies, invested strategically, let others take the visible roles. It made things simpler, especially with family. Halfway through dinner, my father leaned back and looked at me again. "You know," he said, loud enough for others to hear, "events like this are important." I nodded. "They are." He smirked, "But only if you actually belong here." A few people at the table smiled politely. My brother added, "Otherwise, you're just part of the service." Light laughter followed. I picked up my glass calmly, because moments like this didn't bother me anymore. Not after everything I had built. The lights dimmed slightly as the program began. A well-known CEO was scheduled to speak about a major expansion project. The room quieted as he stepped onto the stage. Confident, respected, powerful. My father leaned toward my brother. "This is someone worth listening to," he whispered. The CEO began speaking. Numbers, growth, future plans, everything my father admired. Then, halfway through his speech, he paused. His eyes moved across the audience. Then he smiled slightly. "Well," he said into the microphone, "I didn't expect to see her sitting out there tonight." The room stirred. People turned trying to see who he meant. My father frowned. Who is he talking about? The CEO stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, he continued, I'd like to recognize someone very important to our company. My brother leaned closer, probably one of the investors. Then the CEO raised his hand and pointed directly at our table, at me. My father's expression shifted instantly. That can't be right, he muttered. But then the CEO said something that made the entire room go silent. She's not part of the staff. He looked straight at me. She's the one who owns us. The ballroom went completely still. My father blinked. The what? He whispered. The CEO kept his eyes on me. Would you mind joining me on stage? Whispers spread instantly. My brother turned toward me slowly. You, he said, disbelief all over his face. I stood up. Chairs shifted as people moved aside, watching me with a completely different kind of attention. The same room that had ignored me minutes ago was now focused on every step I took. As I walked toward the stage, I could hear voices rising. That's her. No way. She owns the company. The CEO greeted me with a respectful handshake. Good to see you, he said. You too, I replied. He turned back to the audience. For those who don't know, he said, this is the majority owner behind our entire group. A ripple of shock spread through the room. At my table, my father hadn't moved. My brother leaned forward, staring. The CEO continued. She built the holding structure that controls our parent company. More murmurs. Without her, none of our expansion would have been possible. Then he added calmly, she prefers to stay out of the spotlight. A few people nodded. That explained everything. Why no one recognized me. Why I hadn't been introduced earlier. Then the CEO looked toward my table. I believe her family is here tonight. My father stiffened. The CEO smiled slightly. You should be very proud. No one at the table spoke, because just minutes earlier, they had called me the help. The applause filled the ballroom. Not polite, not casual, real. I stood beside the CEO as executives in the front rows nodded in recognition. Some of them I had worked with for years, people who knew exactly what I had built. From the stage, I looked toward my table. My father hadn't moved. For the first time in my life, he looked unsure. My brother leaned forward, his confidence gone, replaced with something else. Realization. The CEO handed me the microphone. Would you like to say something? He asked. I nodded. The room quieted instantly. I've learned something, I said calmly, that not everything valuable is visible. A few people smiled. Some people build quietly. I paused. Not because they can't be seen. My eyes moved briefly toward my table, but because they don't need to be. The room responded with soft applause. I handed the microphone back and stepped down from the stage. Then I walked straight back to the table, where everything had changed. I reached the table. Silence. No jokes. No whispers. My father looked up slowly. You own all of this? He asked. Through holding companies. I replied calmly. My brother shook his head. All this time we thought. I know what you thought, I said. They both went quiet. I pulled out my chair and sat down. You called me the help, I added softly. My father looked down, unable to respond. I glanced around the ballroom. Executives, investors, people who knew exactly who I was. I just didn't need to prove it. I said, no one stopped me as I stood again, because the person they thought didn't belong was the one who built the entire room.